How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 1 of What If Deku was the son of Mount Lady. And now, let's begin. Stop right there! A hero yells as his words echo throughout an alleyway. Huh? You heard me! Stop! The hero once again says, as the mysterious figure steps out of the shadows, turning towards the hero in the process. What's this? A hero? All of you keep making my life so much easier. You just keep coming to me, the villainous figure says, as the hero shivers go up and down his spine as he takes a step back, recoiling back after the words of the villain echoed throughout his mind. It was as if the villain was intimidating him just by a couple of words. However, the hero wouldn't falter before taking another step forward, right back where he was. So, it appears you were a villain. I guess I was right. So, I'm gonna have to take you into custody, you hear me? The hero says, cracking his fingers, as the villain would only shake his head. I'm afraid that's not gonna do. As the villain would reach his hand down to his side or taking out a sword, as the sword had jagged blades on the side of it to make it easier for cutting into things, mostly flesh, as the villain would then charge towards the hero with no warning, charging right towards him, lifting up his blade right into the air before slashing it right down onto the hero's shoulder. As the sword would go right through the shoulder with ease, the ridges on the sword allowed for it to easily chop right through it, as it would only go just around 3 inches, stronger than what a normal katana would do. Going 3 inches in, the hero would step back, screaming in pain, holding on to his shoulder with both of his hands. Ah! Damn it, he would say, gritting his teeth. I can't die here. I can't die. I got an up-and-coming family waiting for me at home. I can't let them down. The hero would say, going and punching villain right across the face. However, it would seem like it didn't affect him at all, as the villain would then lick his sword as the timbers laid just stuck onto the jagged pieces of the sword. He would lick it as if he was licking a tree, as all of the sudden the hero was stuck in place. This didn't make any sense. This guy's quirk had to do with blood, but yet he just licked his body and yet it worked perfectly fine. This doesn't make any sense at all. The hero killer would then take an axe out of the back of him after having one he'd been carrying, sort of a souvenir he'd gotten from an axed hero. I've been looking for you, Woods. I've finally met you. I've heard all about you and how fake you are of a hero, only doing it for the money and fame. Well, no longer you'll be doing anything for money or fame, as it's simply just over for you, the villain would say before slashing with the axe right at the side of the wounded hero's neck, slashing right in it, chopping at least half of it, chopping at least half into it. As all of a sudden, the wounded hero, his body would go limp after dying from it, but just as an extra precaution, the villain would slam the axe into it once again, as the wood half would slowly fall off, as the wood head would fall off of its body, as the body would fall down to its knees before falling down, as the head would roll to the feet of the villain before he would kick it aside as it would make a thump against the brick wall, as it was only wood versus brick contact. Meanwhile, in a hospital room, we hear the crying sounds of a child, a newborn child. As we end up going deeper, looking into the hospital room, we see a blonde-haired woman holding a child within her arms. She had just given birth to a newborn baby. As we now know this kid as Izuku Midoriya, as his mother would end up being Yu Takayama. Yu had thought long and hard about what she wanted to name her child. She would end up choosing the name Izuku, as this child would no longer be Izuku Midoriya like in canon My Hero Academia. It would now be Izuku Takayama. So Izuku would lay in the arms of his mother as he would look down, smiling down at her child. The doctor would back in after being handed just the birth certificate, as he would then take the child just to make sure everything was healthy with it, as you would then end up being just lying for rest in her hospital bed. You, who was extremely bored, would end up grabbing the remote before searching through the channels endlessly, flicking through them one by one, searching for something that would catch her eye. Eventually, though, she would end up finding it, as she would end up stopping on this channel, as her finger would hover over the next channel button. Her eyes would widen, seeing who's on the screen. This just in, local hero Kamui Woods has recently been found dead in an alleyway. We suspect this to be an act of villainy by the hero killer Stan. Back to you, a news anchor would say, as you would only stare at the screen completely shocked. What? This can't be true. What? You would say, staring on at the screen, her eyes wide. She didn't understand it. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. She now was starting a family. Her husband Kamui Woods and her with their child, Izuku. But now, her husband's dead. What was she gonna do? She sat in the hospital bed with her eyes just with a blank stare, staring on the TV before she would end up turning it off, now only staring at a dark black screen. She would look into the screen, seeing herself in the reflection, just wondering, he should be here with me. Those were the only words she could think of, as eventually a nurse would end up coming in to see you just sitting in the hospital bed, just completely motionless, like she had just lost someone. The nurse would end up asking her what was wrong, but would receive no response. The nurse would get worried before going to ask a doctor to come look and check up on her just to make sure she was okay. The doctor would end up coming in, asking her some questions, all which would remain answerless. As the doctor would end up seeing this, he would say, maybe she's just tired from the birth. We should probably give her some more time. Finally, though, after a couple minutes, the doctor would end up seeing news notification on his phone that a local hero had died. He would end up looking at this before he would end up realizing who his patient was. And that person was her husband, as he would then sit back down before saying towards the nurse who was there with him that they should just give her some more time. We cut forward 4 years as we see a blonde-haired Izuku lying in his bed, as all of a sudden his eyes would widen as Izuku would jump up out of his bed. As Izuku jumping up out of his bed would end up rushing down the halls before banging rapidly on his mother's door. Mom, Mom, Mom! Izuku would yell rapidly, repeating the same word over and over and over again. As finally you would end up opening up the door, looking tired down at Izuku before rubbing her eyes. What is it, Izuku? She would say down towards her small child. It's my birthday! And can we go see the quirk doctor? I can't wait to see what my quirk is! Izuku would yell, so excited, as you would only look down with a smile towards her son, as she would end up patting her hand on his head before just saying, Izuku, it's still 6:30 a.m. The doctor's office doesn't open until 9. We'll have to wait till then. Okay? She would say as Izuku would nod his head, as he would then go back to bed, as we now cut forward an hour to see Izuku walking down to the kitchen, yawning as he had just woken up from a quick nap, as it revealed to be just around 8:30. As Izuku would sit down at the kitchen table, his mother would place just a plate of eggs down on in front of him. He would quickly eat before he would end up jumping up, rushing over to put his shoes on, before he would end up asking her if they can go see the quirk doctor's office now. Of course, she would say yes, as they would then pile up into the car before heading off towards the quirk doctor's office. They would sit down as Izuku would twiddle his thumbs rapidly as he would bounce up and down in his seat as well. He was just so excited. He couldn't wait to see what exactly his quirk was. As Izuku would be jumping up and down, he so excited the doctor would finally walk into the door, pushing open the door. Izuku Takayama, he would say, as Izuku would then stand up, running over towards the doctor, as he would, and his mother, Yu, would end up following into a private room where the doctor would then take a couple of tests. Yup, Izuku here does have a quirk, and it appears to be quite the powerful one. It actually seems like it's going to be a mix of both your quirk and your husband's. So, congratulations. Little Izuku here is going to make a great hero someday. I'm sure of it, the doctor would say in full confidence, smiling down towards Izuku. As Izuku would jump up into the air, "Yeah, I can't wait!" he would yell, holding up his Kamui Woods action figure, one his mother had given him for his birthday after he had eaten breakfast. Izuku had always admired the Wooded Hero. Something about him just seemed so familiar with Izuku, just drawn Izuku in, and Izuku, just for basically that unknown reason, liked the hero. So as much as it hurt his mother to keep on looking at the posters on the wall, she had to deal with it. She has a couple of pictures of him, of course. However, it's just hurts her to know that her son just idolizes his own father without even realizing it. She wishes she could tell him, but she doesn't have the heart to do so. She keeps telling herself when he gets older, but is that really true, or is she just lying to herself that she'll tell him when he gets older? Izuku would end up rushing out of the room as his mother would end up following shortly behind. Izuku would be flying his hero in the air. Even though he didn't have a flying quirk, Izuku was basically just mimicking the motions that Kamui Woods would do. As finally Izuku would make it down to the car, where he would end up hopping into the car so excited, as his mother would put his seatbelt on before they would drive off back to their house. Once they would get inside, Izuku just couldn't wait to tell his friends, as he couldn't wait for the next day of school. As finally, when that day would roll around, we see Izuku get dropped off by his mother before rushing into school, so excited to tell all of his friends what type of quirk he had. As all of the kids would be sitting around a young Bakugo Katsuki, someone who had quite a similar hair color to Izuku. As Izuku would end up pushing and shoving through the crowd, hearing that Bakugo had awoken his quirk, Izuku would look on with stars in his eyes. "Whoa, Bakugo! That quirk's so cool!" he would say as Bakugo would have his hands up into the air with sparks flying out. As Izuku would admire Bakugo's hands, Bakugo would turn towards him with a smug expression. "Yeah, you could say that. I'm for sure gonna become the #1 hero with this quirk. I know it," Bakugo would say. As Izuku would then say, "Oh, I haven't awakened my quirk yet, but I hope I do soon," Izuku would say. However, all of a sudden, a pencil would be thrown out of nowhere, as Izuku would then reach up into the air, catching it, as all of a sudden, with the touch of his fingers, the pencil would end up growing to 10 times the normal pencil's size. As this huge pencil, now the entire width of the classroom, would be sitting there, the teacher would end up turning back to see all the kids before she would end up saying, What is that? Where'd this pencil come from? Did someone just unlock their quirk?" She would end up asking, as Izuku would end up raising his hand. "Me, I did. I just awakened my quirk." He would excitedly shout, as the teacher would end up walking over towards him. Izuku, why don't you try turning this pencil back into its original form, please? The teacher would ask as Izuku would nod his head, concentrating before touching the pencil as it would then shrink back towards its normal size. Whoa, that's so cool! Izuku would yell as the entire class would nod their heads in agreement. So, Izuku, is your quirk basically like you can just make anything bigger or smaller? I mean, that kind of seems like it, Izuku would say. However, his answer wasn't really air at all. He was still so starstruck at unlocking his own quirk. However, this would only be a fraction of what Izuku could unlock through his full potential later on in his life. However, this is when Izuku's 4, and he doesn't have just the capability of something like that just yet. Oh, please. Sure, Izuku's quirk's cool, but you gotta admit, mine's cooler, Bakugo would yell as Izuku would turn towards Bakugo about to say something. And that is where part 1 of What If Deku Was the Son of Mount Lady comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy it, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. Part 2 will be coming out tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, like always, and if part 2 is already out or you're watching this in the future, part 2 should be linked down in the description below or in the comment section below. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.